Brandon Staley, the writing is on the wall. He's going to get the pink slip any day now. It's time to start talking about the next potential candidates to be the Chargers' next head coach in 2024. I got a lot of good ones on this list. We can start off with Ben Johnson, currently the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He's been their OC for the last couple of seasons. This has not only been one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL under Ben Johnson's play calling, but one of the most innovative. They do a lot of creative things. There was a play earlier this season when Penny Sewell ended up picking up a first down. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, who's been utilized a lot over the last couple of weeks by Ben Johnson, not just on the ground, but in the passing game also. And he's been able to rejuvenate Jared Goff's career. When Jared Goff first arrived in Detroit, he pretty much was looked as the reason for why the Rams couldn't get over the hump. And then the Rams go ahead and they win the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. So you look at Jared Goff, with Ben Johnson being his OC, he went from being casted off on the island of misfit toys to being quietly one of the NFL's most efficient quarterbacks. Now, he has had a problem with taking care of the football during the second half of the season, but Ben Johnson, he's done God's work with making sure that this Lions offense not only is innovative and creative, but making sure that Jared Goff has played at an efficient and a really high level. The LA Chargers, you need an offensive-minded coach in there if you're going to go ahead and move on from Brandon Staley, because the offense has failed Justin Herbert the last couple of years. Yeah, you can put a little bit of the blame on him for the disaster that happened in the wild card round against Jacksonville last season. That's cool, but you've been unable to have an effective rushing attack, and that's even with you having a pretty good offensive line. You've had one of the NFL's worst run games for the last 2-3 years. Ben Johnson, with how well the Lions have run the football this year with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, not only should he be able to elevate Justin Herbert and have him playing at his full potential, but he should finally have an offense that can give Justin Herbert a little bit of a break and finally have an offensive coordinator that can help him establish a complementary style of football. The Chargers don't play complementary football. They don't do a good job running the football to take pressure off of Justin Herbert late in games, and that's a large reason why they can't find ways to hold on to wins, because they can't take time off the clock. Ben Johnson would be a perfect hire for the LA Chargers, as long as they're not willing to be cheap. You see, the problem with this organization is that they're too cheap. They're not willing to spend the money that it takes to get a top-notch head coaching candidate. Ben Johnson, I don't think he's going to be too pricey compared to the other guys that I have on this list that I feel the Chargers should hire. But I do think that if the Spanoses aren't willing to open up the wallet just a little bit, they possibly could miss out on Ben Johnson, and it would be a huge mistake. You pair Ben Johnson up with one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL and Justin Herbert, there's no reason why the Chargers possibly couldn't make a deep playoff run year one with him at the helm. Now, if you want somebody who is more proven and has experience at being able to win in the National Football League, you might as well go ahead, open up the wallet, and get Jim Harbaugh. Now, this is probably a pipe dream for Chargers fans out there. We know how cheap this organization is, but if they really are dedicated to trying to win, I believe that Jim Harbaugh should be the first dude who they should call. Okay, he took the 49ers to 3 straight NFC championships, led them to 1 Super Bowl, where they nearly could have won that game if the lights never went off. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is a sensational football coach. He's won everywhere that he's been. Stanford, San Francisco, even in Michigan. He's led them to 3 straight college football playoff appearances and 3 straight Big Ten championships. And he also is an offensive-minded coach to a certain extent, even though he kind of has the mentality of a defensive-minded coach, because he's all about trench plays. He's all about physicality and toughness. But Jim Harbaugh, if the Chargers were to hire him, there's no reason why he wouldn't make this squad a immediate Super Bowl contender. And in the AFC North, when you got to go against Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes twice a season, you need a big-time head coach who's good enough to make sure that not only your team is going to be ready to play, but you're not going to get out-coached like how you have so many times with Brandon Staley being your head man. Jim Harbaugh would immediately make the LA Chargers right now a front runner to win it all next season if he was to get hired by this team. And I do believe that the Spanos are going to change their approach. I do think that they realize that they can't continue to go cheap with hiring new head coaches. If they were ever going to find a year to open up the wallet, this would be the year to go ahead and hire Jim Harbaugh. And I don't think that the Spanos are so cheap that they're just reluctant to pay a big-time head coach. Maybe they just don't see a big-time head coach that's worth spending the money on. Like, you see how much money that Sean Payton's getting paid to coach the Broncos. But Jim Harbaugh, if he was interested in this job, which he should be because it's pretty much tailor-made for him to win right away, I don't see why the Spanos wouldn't go ahead and give him a call and go ahead and pay him the money that he wants. You see Michigan, they're offering him a new contract right now when his extension is only somewhere around $11 million a year. The Spanos should easily be able to match that and give him a $15 million contract to have him come coach this football team. And they have spent money in the past. It used to be really cheap when it came to signing players in free agency. If they can change their mindset when it comes to free agency, I don't get why they wouldn't change their mindset when it comes to hiring the right head coach to maximize having a franchise caliber quarterback in Justin Herbert and an already tailor-made Super Bowl caliber team. You get Jim Harbaugh in this mug, there's no way the Chargers don't at least make it to the divisional round of the playoffs during the 2024 NFL season. If you don't want to go Ben Johnson or Jim Harbaugh and you want to try to go as cheap as possible, Brian Callahan probably could be the best budget hire you could make. Okay, Brian Callahan, he's been the offensive coordinator ever since Zach Taylor first arrived as the head coach in Cincinnati. He doesn't call plays, but he does assist in the game planning, helping with Zach Taylor, getting the offense right in certain situations. And Brian Callahan got a couple of head coaching interviews last offseason. He's a really bright offensive mind. You know, that Zach Taylor, Sean McVay coaching tree normally produces some pretty good offensive minds. Brian Callahan, maybe he could be an upgrade from Brandon Staley because he's an offensive-minded coach that's going to specialize on the offense side of football, and he may not specialize in defense, but I don't think it would take too much effort for him to hire a good defensive coordinator. You look at Brian Callahan and the role that he's contributed to helping Joe Burrow reach the level that he's at right now. He played a major factor in the Bengals being able to make it to the Super Bowl in 2021 it was. So Brian Callahan, he wouldn't be a big name or flashy hire. He would be a budget hire if you're still looking to stay cheap, if you're this ownership group. But he wouldn't be a bad get for the Chargers. He would be a pretty good fit with how much knowledge he has on the offense side of football. I do believe that he probably would take over the play calling duties, but I wouldn't be too worried about that. You know, Zach Taylor, his play calling is pretty good. He also spent time coming from somebody that's under that Sean McVay tree. I don't believe play calling would be an issue with Brian Callahan at the helm. Hopefully he could have the running game improved. And there's just way too much talent for this offense to just not be a top 10 unit with him at the helm as head coach. And we've seen that offensive-minded coaches are now starting to come into the league and they're starting to have more success than the defensive-minded guys or the guys who don't really specialize in anything. They are able to build a special relationship with their quarterback. Brian Callahan, he's a really likable guy. Nobody has anything negative to say about him inside of the Bengals organization, and he's somebody that Zach Taylor really respects despite the fact that he doesn't call plays. Brian Callahan would be a pretty solid hire for the Chargers if they were to go cheap. Brian Flores, not an offensive-minded guy, defensive-minded coach. He's the DC for the Vikings, but he's done wonders with that Vikings defense. The Vikings right now are 5th in the NFL and points per game allowed at 18 point something. Last year, they were not only one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but they were really conservative. And there's been a handful of games this year, such as their recent win against the Raiders and when they upset the 49ers a couple of weeks ago on Monday night, that has been due in part to how good of a defensive coordinator Brian Flores is. He's head coach material. There's no reason this dude shouldn't be a head coach right now. In his final 2 years when he was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he had a winning record. He went 9-8. Not too often are you going to see a head coach get fired for having winning seasons that early into his coaching tenure. And out of all of the coaches that have come from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, he probably is the best one of them all. Okay, he didn't get along with Tua. He never really was on board with drafting Tua. He much rather would have preferred to have either Jordan Love or Justin Herbert. Well, you give him to the Chargers and he finally will have the quarterback that he's been wanting for a very long time. Now, can he get the offense right? That's the question. But with so much talent on the offense side of football, with you having a pretty good offensive line, a good group of wide receivers, especially when Mike Williams gets back fully healthy, you shouldn't really struggle at finding an offensive coordinator that should want to take over coaching one of the most talented offenses led by one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Brian Flores, he will fix this defense. This defense under Brandon Staley has been a laughingstock. He will get better play out of the secondary. You'll definitely get better play out of Asante Samuel Jr., who has not really lived up to his billing when he was drafted a few years ago out of FSU, more so due to the coaching. Brian Flores is going to be able to put him in a system that's really going to get the most out of him. And then I'm really excited to think about all the possibilities that Brian Flores could bring to the table when it comes to the versatile ways that he can use Derwin James. And he's way better of a defensive coordinator and a defensive mind than what Brandon Staley is. And in a conference that's dominated by great quarterback play, bringing Brian Flores to the AFC, especially when you got to go against Sean Payton and Patrick Mahomes twice a year, that would be a really big benefit for you if you can get him and he can get the offensive coordinator hired right. This dude is a fantastic head coach. I don't think any of us can deny that this dude is a winner. He won with the Miami Dolphins team his first season. That was expected to be the worst team possibly in the history of the NFL over the last decade. They weren't expected to win a single game, and he was able to rally off a couple of wins. And plus, they tried to pay this dude to lose on purpose. He was like, nah, F that, man. Like, I'm going to try to win with the guys that I have. And his last 2 seasons in Miami, he was a winner. Only thing he has to get right is the offensive coordinator. And that really shouldn't be an issue because he really hired the OC that he did because he was trying to make work with the quarterback that he was forced to draft that he never really wanted in the first place. Maybe he could hire the right offensive coordinator and do something that Brandon Staley has been unable to do. And lastly, I got Bill Belichick. Okay, Bill Belichick, I don't think he's done. I do want to see him get one more opportunity. And even with New England this season, a lot of the reasons why they've lost games hasn't been because he's been outcoached. The defense still has been fantastic. It's just that he has not been able to get it right with offense. And a main reason for that is because he sucks at drafting offense. You know, there's a rumor that says that, not even a rumor, C.J. Stroud told the Texans to draft Tank Dell. And C.J. Stroud looks like he has a better eye at drafting wide receivers than what Bill Belichick does. But Bill Belichick, he gets hired by the Chargers. You don't have to worry about him assembling the offense because the offense, the talent is already there. You already got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams at wide receiver. You got a great offensive line. You have to figure out the running game. You got a proven top-level quarterback in Justin Herbert. All you got to figure out is the defense, and the talent for that defense is there too. You got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. Maybe if you want to bring back Kenneth Murray, you can figure out a way to get the most out of him. You're going to have Derwin James. Bill Belichick loves him, Derwin James kind of players. Really versatile, can line him up anywhere. He would be a fantastic fit with the style of defense that Bill Belichick likes to run. Bill Belichick, maybe New England wasn't the right place for him to end his career off due to his ineptitude to assemble a competent offense. He goes to the Chargers. Don't really have to worry about that. You probably don't even have to allow him to become the GM. Just allow him to coach the football team, keep the current GM that you have, and just continue to build up that offense. And all he needs to do is hire Josh McDaniels to be his offensive coordinator again, because Josh McDaniels, he's not a good head coach, but this dude is a fantastic OC. Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh will probably be my top 2 picks to be the next head coach of the LA Chargers if I was the dude making the decisions. But if I couldn't get my hands on Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh, I would go after Ben Johnson. You definitely need a young, innovative offensive mind if you can't get an already established head coach. Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh, they're established. They've won at the highest level. And I'm pretty confident that with either Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh, you shouldn't miss out on the playoffs. With Brian Flores, maybe there's a small chance that you miss out on him. And maybe if you do get Brian Flores, there's a small chance that you may not be able to have the success that you've been able to have if you would hire a Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick, because these guys have proven that they know what it takes to coach a Super Bowl caliber team. Brian Flores, he's a good head coach. He's good enough to be a playoff caliber coach that can get you to the playoffs, and maybe you win a playoff game or two, but we don't really know yet if he's good enough to lead a team to a Super Bowl. That remains to be decided. But Jim Harbaugh, Bill Belichick would be my top 2 picks. If you can't get them, I would get Ben Johnson. He's probably the most promising offensive mind out there who's going to be a head coaching candidate this offseason. These are my selections for who I believe are the best candidates for the Chargers head coaching job in 2024 when they finally fire Brandon Staley.